Hi, it's Dave. Welcome to episode 249. Today we're doing a live stream together with Emmet Peppers, and we are going to talk about Tesla putting Bitcoin or $1.5 billion into Bitcoin. What does this mean for Tesla, TSLA, the stock price, short term, medium, long term, etc.? But first, I want to welcome Emmet. How are you doing?
Hey Dave, good. Yeah, good chatting with you. I love chatting with you on these things. It's fun.
Yeah, yeah,
It's fun making them
definitely.
regular too. I think, people like them and I enjoy it and you enjoy it. It's good for everyone, it seems like.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, always learn a lot from different points of view, and I think having someone else to kind of discuss things helps me to look at things a little bit deeper from a different angle. So I appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah, sure.
All right. So for those who aren't aware by now, Tesla has put in $1.5 billion into Bitcoin in January, and word has it that it was around $33,000. There was a Reddit post where a Tesla engineer says he built the bot that bought Bitcoin for Tesla. He's a Tesla engineer, and he says,
Wow.
yeah, they bought he said at 33,000 average price.
Wow.
And so Tesla, Bitcoin's at 47,000. So Tesla, I mean,
It's already
short term
up.
wise, yeah, they're up
Yeah.
almost
Yeah.
like I think over 40% just in a month off of their $1.5 billion investment.
Wow.
But I think a lot of times people will quickly make a judgment call. This is great or this is terrible. Sometimes I think things like this is much more complicated than meets the eye, and there are lots of different factors involved. And I don't know if anyone really knows for sure exactly how positive or how negative it is, unless we really can, examine all issues. I mean, first thing is disclaimer: all the stuff we talk about is purely conjecture, opinion. It's not meant for investing advice, and we always are able to reserve the right to change our opinions over time with more information. That's
Yeah.
kind of the whole ethos of my channel, sharing along the way. So what was your first reaction? I know, I remember you did some
Yeah.
tweets, but okay, when you found out, yesterday morning that Tesla put $1.5 billion into Bitcoin, what was your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it smelled fishy to me. I don't know what to make of it. I have mixed feelings. Like I said, on one hand, okay, yeah, they're getting with the times of cryptocurrency that, everyone should have a little exposure maybe. But on the other hand, they have all this capital, and I'm like, shouldn't they be putting that capital to work and doing other things with it? Like speculating on the markets is not what I want Tesla to be doing, and it just seems like it's throwing mixed signals around and making a distraction here. And I know Bitcoin fans, have been calling for this for a while that are also Tesla, fans, and so those people are, greatly appeased, But then there's a
Yeah.
lot of people who are not Bitcoin believers, who are upset by this and feel, misguided or feel like they lost their trust,
Yeah.
and yeah, so it's mixed feelings. It just seems, if Tesla was going to hold some of its balance sheet in gold, then yeah, sure, maybe move it to digital gold instead, right? But that's not the case. They weren't like if Bitcoin didn't exist, would they really put $1.5 billion into physical gold right now? I don't think so. That's kind of the litmus test I use. So it just seems strange to me. I don't know. I'm looking forward to hear, like Ron Barron said, their rationale. I think he's had some quote that he's like looking forward to their rationale. It's not totally surprising, but he's looking forward to the rationale. What
Yeah.
about what about you?
Yeah. I think so. Pomp um, on Twitter, he was saying, yesterday, congratulations, Bitcoiners, for memeing your way to getting the richest person on earth to buy
That
Bitcoin,
was funny.
and which is kind of true in some senses, like the memeing, the publicity, the narrative control that Bitcoin fans have had on social platforms, and getting to Elon and getting his attention has been like amazing. I mean, um, whether it's right or wrong or helpful or not, I give credit to the efforts of people to get Elon's attention.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's unpack this a bit. So
Well, one thing I want to say
yeah,
also is, do you think, like, knowing Elon and seeing him so long, I feel like he is an emotional guy and he cares about things genuinely. It's a good thing, and it can also be a little bit of not a bad thing, but can sometimes prove rash decisions, whether it's a tweet he shouldn't have made or whatever, and I'm not saying this is a decision, an emotional decision, but do you think I think he was clearly distraught by the whole GameStop thing. He brought on the Robinhood CEO to ask him, and I'm sure he was disappointed in Vlad's answers. And if Vlad worked for Elon, he'd be fired probably. But Elon tried to do the best he could to just get to the bottom of it publicly to help calm himself and everyone else down. But I think that he lost more trust in the system from that, to be honest. Like, I think everyone's losing trust in the system all the time. And I think that kind of moment somehow triggered him maybe to be like, although that was before, right? So the GameStop thing was at the end of January, and they bought Bitcoin like a week before that, I guess, right? Is that right?
Yeah. I think it was in mid-January.
Yeah. So maybe that's not it, but I don't know. I don't, I guess it's probably, I'm sure, calculated, but, there's definitely emotion there, I'm sure, in the system, distrusting it and stuff. Obviously, everyone who buys Bitcoin feels like distrust in the system.
I think the way I take it is this isn't a kind of a short-term thinking move by Elon. He's not trying to maximize investments. He could do much better things with cash. He's not even trying to preserve cash. He's not trying to fight inflation. I don't think that's the main objective of Elon. I think Elon, he came to this conclusion that he thinks Bitcoin is good for humanity long term. I think
you think he came to that conclusion?
Yeah,
he didn't have that conclusion.
He didn't have that conclusion, but I think
he changed his mind.
He changed his mind. I kind of wonder if he talked to some people. I kind of wonder.
I'm sure lots of people talk to him all the time about it. Jack Dorsey, all these people are like bringing his wrist, like, buy Bitcoin, Elon. Why don't you like it? Every day he's probably hearing it.
I wonder if he had some great conversations with Jack Dorsey or some others. Like, imagine if you are a Bitcoin proponent and you can get Elon to buy on board. Like, it's going to be huge. And I think at a certain point, Elon concluded that he should support Bitcoin, that it has a noble kind of goal and end. It might not be completely guaranteed, but he felt like he wanted to support Bitcoin. And so the question mark comes where should he have just stuck his own personal money into Bitcoin and then announced it and say, hey, I support Bitcoin and the mission. Right. Yeah. And that wouldn't be
take out some of his Tesla shares or SpaceX shares to do that.
Exactly. And he could have sold some Tesla shares and SpaceX shares, and then which, wouldn't be that great. But at least with his own cash, he said, I believe in Bitcoin and its mission. I support it. And that wouldn't actually be that controversial in a sense. But I think what happened was, rather than his own personal funds, they took Tesla's funds, which is a much more complicated thing because it's not completely his discretion. It's, this is
shareholders.
And now the shareholder base has become so much more diversified, and with all these funds holding. And so you put this Bitcoin money into Bitcoin, you make a statement. Bitcoin is good for humanity long term. I want to support it. But then the question mark is this Elon's personal thing, or is this really, does it even match Tesla's mission? And kind of why bring in all the other shareholders into this, So
why force them all to get exposure when some of them are on the fence and not believers, and some of them are, right? It's like,
exactly, yeah. And then also the question is, should it have gone to a shareholder vote if it's kind of something controversial?
That's what it should have probably done, but maybe by then it'd be too late, and it'd be, maybe he saw. He's smart. Maybe he sees the, this Michael Saylor conference recently with all these CEOs and corporations, on the borderline of getting on too. Maybe he just wanted to beat the rush if there was going to be a rush and get some now before it rises dramatically. And I still think, that, and I know you've expressed this concern that some big governments, they can't be happy about this. And, there's going to be some kind of call to action, whether it's the U.S. government, or I think India already did something about it, but that didn't seem to do anything. But China and the U.S. and Europe are like the major, European Union are the major, governments to try to do something about it. And at some point, whether it's next week or when it's way too late, when it's, $1 million of Bitcoin, they're going to do something and try to say, okay, everyone's Bitcoins, have to be reported, and we're going to tax everyone right now based on your unrealized gain or something like that, and it's just going to be like, whoa, just going to make people feel like the system's even more corrupt almost, but also it might scare some institutional holders out if there's more restrictions, or who knows. So could create a crash, but we don't know when that would happen.
Yeah, exactly. And we don't know at what price point that crash should be. It could be, way higher or something.
Yeah.
I think one of the interesting things about this whole thing is the short-term kind of impact of Tesla buying Bitcoin. I know a lot of Tesla, if you're a Tesla fan and a Bitcoin fan together, you're probably just, with some of the stuff we're saying, you might not be very happy with, because, hey, we're just we're just objectively looking at it from different angles. We're not saying it's a blanket good or bad right now. There are different factors. I think one positive is, I think Elon wants to be on the right side of history, in the sense that he sees Bitcoin kind of going forward, marching, and he wants to support it in its mission, its noble kind of goal of decentralized empowering of the masses. And he wants, I think, he wants to be on that right side. And so I think the long-term benefit could be that, Tesla staked their reputation and helped Bitcoin early on at a very important transition point, and helped move the world to decentralization. And that could be a very positive thing. I think in Elon's mind, that benefit kind of outweighed the short-term risks, or the scrutiny and the criticism that he would get. He's kind of he's always looking long-term, he wants to do something that he feels is right. I think that's kind of the thing that, to understand Elon, is like, he will do what he believes is right, regardless of the impact to the stock price. If he really thinks that this is the right thing to do, he will do it. And I think in this Bitcoin scenario, he really thought it was the right thing to do. Put some money into Bitcoin, support the movement, and we'll come out on the right side of history, right?
Yeah, and it's only 7% of their cash balance. He's opening the door, right? He's just creaking it open, but he's opening the door. And it's just a little bit of a creak, but it's enough to get everyone's attention. And who's to say he doesn't open the door further later and put half of their balance sheet in Bitcoin, right? So, it's definitely newsworthy. People talk about it. It's potentially historic. The largest company to do this. Who's next? Apple's probably going to take forever to move on something like this.
Exactly.
It's so bureaucratic by now. But maybe Google can move quicker on something like this, or Oracle. Larry Ellison. I wouldn't be surprised if he's right behind or something. Maybe you'll see a more companies start doing something similar. So, I'm still mixed about it. I don't know. It's not good or bad, but it does smell a little fishy to me. Doesn't mean that it's wrong. My own. I can't put words to it. It just seems like off their mission a little bit.
Yeah. I was thinking yesterday, I think one alternative approach that Tesla could have taken is, they could have put $1 or $2 billion onto kind of a decentralized finance platform. For example, there's a couple big ones, Compound and Aave on the Ethereum blockchain, that lets you lend money and get interest. And so what Tesla could have done is, they could have put a couple $1 billion onto Compound or Aave, and they could have got a couple percent interest and they would get more interest by doing that than anywhere else, basically. And by doing that move, it would serve different benefits. One is they would get higher interest, but second, they would support the entire kind of DeFi space, the decentralized finance space.
Add liquidity to it.
Yeah, it would add a lot of just trust and things to crypto. And Bitcoin would benefit as well, because Bitcoin in a way is kind of an on-ramp into kind of a larger kind of crypto space. And so by doing that move, it would have supported Bitcoin. It would have supported DeFi as well. It would have supported a lot of, things going on without, appearing to take the speculative bet, right? Because putting a couple billion and getting interest is kind of like cash, it makes more sense of what that was supposed to be for, like cash reserves.
Yeah. Or if they just wanted to support it, they could have said, okay, we accept payments in Bitcoin, we'll buy 10 or 100 million or 50 million, just enough to make sure we can, do exchanges in Bitcoin and so forth, for anyone that wants to buy or get a refund in Bitcoin or whatever, so they could have done something like that. But they actually moved, significant port, that 1.5 billion, that was like, a year ago, I don't know, that would have been like what, half their balance sheet a year ago or a quarter of it. But now it's like 6%, but
Exactly.
it's a
Yeah.
meaningful amount,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. I'm curious. What do you think the impact is on the short term kind of Tesla stock price? I want to. I think it's
Yeah.
actually it could be more complicated. So let's take a deeper look and say, okay, do you think this adds scrutiny to Tesla? Does
Yeah.
this add question marks from
Yes.
funds that, let's say, have billions of dollars,
Yeah.
and they're traditional conservative funds, and they just have, yesterday they're just like in shock. Like, how could
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
company, a mega cap S&P 500 company like Tesla, take billion plus dollars into something like a Bitcoin, which they completely think
Yeah.
it's fraud, hypothetically. Um,
Yeah.
and how does this like change? Does it impact anything in terms of Tesla's the stock price at all
Yeah.
going forward?
I think long term it doesn't really, but short term, yeah, that's definitely a chink in the armor short term. You have, investors, we all know, like the guy Gary Black, for example, and there's people that don't believe in Bitcoin that are a little, pretty disappointed, like clearly disappointed in this move. And it's enough to put them over the edge and be like, I think I'm going to move sell this and move to other investments that I have my eye on. So there's fund managers in that same mindset. I think that maybe don't know, they're hesitant about Bitcoin. They think there's nothing under it really. It's just kind of this bubble that, and then they see Tesla, like a company they already have, like, concerns about, but they're pressured to buy. And now this happens. Now they're like, well, now I'm not going to buy it for sure. Whatever it is. I think, you see today the stock's down, 2% or 2.5% right now while we're talking. I don't think that's a coincidence. I think it's just a reaction to some people that, feel a little alienated by this move so Tesla's not like, it's taking a view on Bitcoin now. It's clearly has a view on, Bitcoin. And most companies are neutral and don't have a view on Bitcoin, but Tesla's picking a side.
Yeah, I mean, a few days ago, you were saying how you think Tesla has a 90%, or I don't know, whatever. I forget the exact odds, but
Yeah, like
percent
90% in like
or
3 years
something.
doubling
Yeah,
or something like that.
you thought Tesla could double its stock price in three
Yeah.
years, probably in your own personal probability grid, maybe 90%. Does this change that percent at all in any way?
Not not yet. I
Mm,
mean, if the short-term price is continues to decline, that's going to go down.
mhm.
But I don't think so. No, I don't. I mean, it's short term, a chink in their armor for some. Some people think it's a bullish signal, right? But I think medium to long term, it's not going to matter, especially once we get some other companies coming on board. Whether it's Oracle, Google, Apple, Facebook, any of these, S&P 500 companies, big,
Mm.
blue chip companies also buying pieces of Bitcoin. It'll become more normalized and accepted. And so, I think it'll rebound for sure. But this could be a good opportunity for people who want to go long Tesla and have been waiting for a drop, right? So,
Yeah. Are you concerned at all? I mean, Gary Black, one of his reasons he exited, it was the Bitcoin purchase, but he listed a few others, like kind of a weak or vague 2021 guidance. Typically, historically, weak Q1 performance, also kind of lower than expected growth margins. Do any of those things kind of concern you at all?
no, they don't. I understand where he's coming from,
Mm,
and he seemed to get in at the right time when the Tesla was near the lows. I think just a year or 2 years ago, maybe. But I think he can get out now. He had a good return on himself, and maybe he sees better opportunities elsewhere. But I think those are all. Tesla does not need the share price to go higher. I'm not saying they're trying to push it down, but they're not in a position where they feel like they need to oversell what they're doing. They don't need to, be held accountable to certain quarterly or annual production estimates that could get completely disrupted with another, global lockdown if coronavirus comes back, or, it puts odd pressure within the organization. Like if Fremont feels like they hit their target, maybe they relax, for example, or maybe, so that then they have their own internal targets, which might be different from the public targets. Just it can be a little bit of a headache. The more info, more guidance, particulars they have to give. And in the past, yeah, when they wanted their stock price to be higher, so they could have the option to raise capital, yeah, then they needed to do that. But at this point, they don't need to raise capital ever again, and so they don't really care if some investors are going to be like, oh, there's not enough specifics in your guidance. It doesn't matter to them. I think they're going to just outperform and they're going to be who they want to be. And I think it's good ultimately, long term. But yeah, short term traders don't like it. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you? What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, I think I look at things a little bit like, I think sometimes it's difficult because I have so many thoughts that I look at things in a way where, I look at it from different angles, but also from different time frames. And so, for example, a Bitcoin thing, I can see long term, there's potential Tesla being on the right side of history. I could see it possibly working out benefit wise, Elon doing the right thing, what he thinks is. And I mean, that has typically, there are risks where at times, he does certain things that don't work out, but he thinks it was right at that time, right? So there are risks and rewards, but I think there is something about the short term where I think this puts a pause or a question mark on Tesla from certain traditional conservative long funds that I don't think necessarily a lot of retailers understand the complete culture. And it's a very entrenched culture that really believes they know what is right, what companies ought to do, what they have been doing. And it's very, very defined, And when something happens where it, like for example, this is another narrative, another angle. Tesla has been working for years and years and years to break out of kind of this rogue kind of startup company that has no chance, right? And Wall Street just scorned, and they worked all these years, not necessarily to please Wall Street. Obviously, that's not the point. They work hard for their mission, but the result was they were able to win over, through different ways, being profitable, S&P 500 inclusion, stock price, etc. They were able to win over the world of investing in a way. And what people don't realize is a good portion of the people that have bought into Tesla, whether it's the S&P 500 or benchmark funds or whatever, they did so kind of reluctantly. And it wasn't necessarily this, I believe in Elon Musk and the long-term vision of Tesla. Hey, yay. But a lot of that buying also contributed to the increase of stock price. But if, it's not necessarily these guys are fickle. It's just that they can get offended by very things that they think are offensive, right?
Yeah.
And that can change a mood and a sentiment around a company and a stock. I'm not saying that actually it's going to crash this week, or I'm not saying what the complete impact will be, but I think I don't think it's wise to completely discount that whole cultural kind of approach and how big money thinks and why they're in Tesla, et cetera. How does this play out? I think a lot of it is macro influence where, if the macro environment is supportive, if the stock market continues to go up, Tesla is part of that, right? We have, for example, Biden's perhaps EV credit restoration. There's more factories coming on. There's this demand, et cetera. There's a lot of tailwinds for Tesla to take advantage of. But at the same time, if there is some type of market correction, that's when, when things are going down, maybe Tesla isn't necessarily as strong as before because there's additional kind of mark on Tesla's back. I don't know exactly what the impact is. I don't want to alarm people at all, but I don't think when I look at the bigger picture, I don't see it as a positive for the Tesla buying Bitcoin is a positive towards how big money views Tesla. It just seems like you can twist the the narrative as much as you want, but I just don't see how big money looks at that as a
Yeah.
positive in
It's
any
like an
way.
extra pink flag for them to
Yeah.
consider. There's already enough pink flags with Tesla, but like you said, they've been knocking them out one by one over the years, and now they're finally in S&P 500. And now you add this extra thing to be concerned about, and it's like, whoa, this old money or institutional money, whatever. Bitcoin
Yeah.
is sort of like a revolt against them in one way, and it's just I don't know. It's definitely it doesn't help them with the institutional money, in my opinion, that is choosing where to invest their funds.
Yeah. If you don't mind, I want to go to some YouTube questions, and I'll go ahead and put on the
Yeah.
screen. I'll read it out to you guys. MS says, who cares that the Wall Street idiots that have been wrong this entire time think about Tesla buying Bitcoin? The fact that they are so mad and worried about it lets me know it was the right move. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it hits a nerve. I think it's just you're picking it. Tesla's picking a side, and some people are upset and some people are happy. I just don't know. I still don't know if it's the right thing for Tesla's mission. This kind of distraction, but yeah, I can understand where that person's coming from. What about you? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's difficult for a lot of people to think in multiple time frames, because you would think long term is the only important time frame in investing, or let's say a company like Tesla, which has validity. But then on the flip side, there is something about short term that I don't want to discount completely, actually. There's a reason. Like, one of the things like I resonate actually with talking with you, and also over the many years that we've known each other, is that we kind of share in different ways. We share a respect for the long term and the short term.
Yeah.
Like a lot of times there's a dichotomy where you just reject one or the other. But there seems to me there's something when you bring it all together, where you can see something that's really important long term, but then also you can see short term, and they're different approaches, different minds almost, and there's different ways to profit off of both, but to understand both. And so in some ways,
it's sort of like the difference is like quantum physics versus regular physics, I feel like, in a way. But anyway, go on what you're saying.
Yeah. So, I mean, in some ways, if the only thing you know is long term, and maybe you don't care and it doesn't matter, but maybe there is a world of understanding short term, understanding the mentality and the psychology of markets and movements, and how to approach it and profit off of that. That is actually pretty fascinating, and that's why I think
it's seemingly random short term, but there is always an explanation.
Exactly.
But then long term, it's not random, like like where it's going, but it's it's just long term, so you can't see it the next day. It takes years to play out. Yeah,
exactly.
So it's similar with like quantum mechanics. Like you go to the atomic level, and it's like the protons here or here. I don't know. It's all random. And then when you zoom out, you're like, yeah, that's a table right there for sure.
Yeah. Here's Christopher Leto says, Dave, long term, it's good for the company. Why worry about the stock price? Right. So that's another kind of, who cares about what happens right now? If it's good for the company long term, which is a question mark. There's pros and cons. The way I think about it also is, I learned a lot from the stock price, actually. Like, some people say, ignore the stock price, right? Who cares about the stock price? Just think about Tesla 10 years down the road. But for me, I'm like, wait a minute, the markets and how stocks move, and combined with how the funds are using media, and how just how thought changes as well, and sentiment, and how this affects not just the short term, but there's also this element where the stock price today actually does affect long term in certain ways. You can't say today's stock price doesn't have any impact on Tesla's long term future. It does, but also you can learn stuff about the mindset of the stock, of investors, that can help you further assess kind of the long term possibilities. So I don't know. I don't look at it as a complete dichotomy. I'm not one to say, don't even look at the stock price, just only look at the long term.
Yeah.
I think maybe for a lot of people, that's maybe perhaps the best thing to do.
Yeah.
Especially if you don't have a lot of time and a lot of focus on things. If you can only choose one, then I agree. Just
choose long term.
Yeah, choose long term, chill out, don't worry about this stuff, But but if you want to dive in and really just go ahead in, then there's a whole world of complexity that I think there's a lot to learn actually.
Yeah, I agree. It's relaxing to just focus on the long term, but it's also a little more boring for me. Like I want to know what's going on day to day, why the stock's up or down 5% or 2%. It's there's oftentimes a short term catalyst, and it's just interesting to see how those play out over time.
Yeah. Okay. Shekhar Rahea says, "Hi, Dave and Emmett. Could Tesla buying a risky asset like Bitcoin be considered a signal of a bubble in general? Why not buy back Tesla stock instead?"
Hmm. That's a good question. I think I saw some other people mention something like that, like why don't they just buy back stock, right? But that I don't think that would be why. They just sold stock at $600 last. They're going to buy it back at 800. That would be not very wise. You want to do the opposite maybe if it's but yeah. I mean, I think they have this balance sheet and. I think buying back stock would have been seen worse, actually, I think, overall. So the Bitcoin move is a vote of support for, cryptocurrency, and that's all there is to it with Elon, sort of getting on board with Bitcoin, I think, and showing his support of a decentralized store of value. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I I think I think I wouldn't say it's a sign of a bubble per se. I mean, Elon, he's not looking to scalp and to just make a short-term profit. I mean, I think just the political statement, the statement of belief in Bitcoin is, I think, what Elon is going for.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
why not buy Tesla stock? Yeah, I mean, I think what it is Tesla needs something as reserve in case of emergencies. And they had
Yeah.
cash, but then all this printing of money and let's say assets going up and there's concern of just more printing of money, and so it's kind of like, okay, what do we do with this money that we need to stick around
Yeah.
in case of emergency? But I think what's the controversial part is there's a crowd of people who say, oh, Bitcoin is better than cash, put it in Bitcoin, right? But I think there's another angle to say, hey, Bitcoin and cash, I don't know, they're not really correlated assets in a sense to me. Like Bitcoin to me, I mean, sure, the use case that some people think is this deflationary, asset as a hedge to fiat, etc. But to me, the correlation of Bitcoin is, hey, this is a potential high growth asset. It's a potential 10x, right, or 100x, whatever asset. But the nature of these type of high growth assets is there is risk involved, right? It's a high risk. And if you were to say and can try to make a case that, oh no, Bitcoin is low risk because the dollar is losing value, etc., like you're missing the point. You can't like cut off Bitcoin and cash for a second. Bitcoin it has risk involved, and it has potential, but it has risk, and you just got to look at it for what it is. It's a just like, for example, Tesla has risk, and people can say, hey, this is a high growth speculative investment. We might disagree that the whole speculative is maybe a bit, I mean, you can look down on it and say, oh, it's too risky. But if you know the company, maybe it's not as speculative. Maybe it is a risky investment, but still the risks are justified. I think that's how Bitcoiners are looking at it. They're saying, hey, I know Bitcoin a lot. I don't think it's risky. It's low risk. It's high growth. And we want Tesla to be in it. But I think Tesla has kind of, I don't say, a little bit bought into this whole thing of, Bitcoin is better than cash. That argument, which I do have some questions about.
Yeah, they could always put their cash in, if they're not happy, they could put their cash in a global basket of currencies too. Like if they thought the US was going to print a ton of money, but then all the other fiat, governments could be printing more fiat currency too, I guess you could say. But they could put like 25% in dollars, 20% in Hong Kong dollars, 20% in Japanese. They could do something to mitigate the risk of just the US government printing money. But, who's to say all the governments aren't going to print a lot more money too, right? But if that's going to happen, you would think the value of stocks in general are going to go up in relation to the fiat currency. So Tesla's share price would go up, in almost a proportion of some sort. But yeah, there's a lot of theoretical arguments for and against it. But he's clearly entering that domain and picking a side now. So it's a whole new kind of discussion point around Tesla.
Yeah, I think for investors who've been around many years, we're kind of used to seeing Elon do certain things that, maybe they work out, maybe they don't work out,
Yeah, out of the ordinary stuff.
And I think that's part of investing in Tesla and investing in Elon. You get both. You get the strong points, which is he's got this crazy ambition, execution.
Yeah.
He makes it happen, right? But you do get along the way certain bumps and certain things that could work out, could not work out. But usually Elon he adjusts. Usually if there is a big mistake, he'll pivot. He will make and I don't think Bitcoin is that type of mistake that if it is a mistake, which is still a question mark. But it's not something that I'm too concerned about because it's something that's rather easily navigatable.
Yeah.
It's not for example, the whole Alien Dreadnought Model 3 production where you build this crazy, production factory that doesn't work, at least half of it, or, a lot of the robots, that threaten the entire company. It's not like that type of move. And so in some ways, I'm not too concerned, but it is something that I think, it's worth thinking about, and I appreciate also your side. Your
I wonder if he'll change his mind on SPACs. I know he's commented a few times, and now Starlink, everyone's talking about that, and he says it'll IPO. But I want he's trying to figure out a fair way to go to investors, obviously. But either a direct listing would be my thought, or maybe he'll change his mind on SPACs too, and think, oh, maybe we'll just do Starlink as a SPAC. Who knows? It's that's another discussion for another time. But,
that's true. Yeah. I think Elon. Yesterday he was saying that Starlink. He's planning to take Starlink IPO, right? As soon as they can have more, I guess, cash flows that are more regular, or they can forecast their cash flows. So I think
a lot of companies at Starlink's point would IPO at this point for sure, and go public. But I think Elon's trying to motivate his troops for Starlink to be like, come on, guys, get it together. Let's figure this out first. And then we'll be much better off when we go to the, to the public. Let's just get our act together with finances and fund and just be more self-sustaining first, before, there's probably a lot of costs that need to be cut, some more development lagging, who knows? But I just feel like it was more of a kick in the butt to the people that are, trying to motivate them to work a little harder before they're going to get some kind of reward with an IPO or something.
Yeah, definitely. I can't wait. So supposedly, Starlink right now, you can't move the satellite dish, like this block. It's linked to, they call it a cell. And so hopefully in the future, they'll have a way where I could stick my Starlink dish on an RV and just drive around.
That'd be so cool. That's like the next generation, maybe.
Yeah.
Do you know if the power goes down and you have? I want to find out if the power goes out down on the grid, then and I have a Powerwall and a solar connected to be off grid. I wonder. Conceptually, I think my Starlink should still connect to the Starlink internet, but I know there's these ground stations going on right now, and I wonder if those ground stations are connected to the grid, and then they would shut down too, and so the internet would not work, maybe. But
probably.
Curious.
Yeah. I think my understanding is actually it's going through mostly the ground stations. But eventually they'll have lasers, and I think this iteration, I think they're sending up satellites with lasers right now. Yeah, so we'll see.
Neat. Yeah, exciting.
Yeah, fun stuff.
So that guy Michael Burry, also, we were going to talk about him. Yeah, he's quite a character. That guy, he's, it's funny. Some of these, and I read that book, The Big Short, and familiar with the guy's success in the past back in 2008. What's that? 13 years ago now, and the world's changed so much in that time.
Yeah.
Some people I feel like don't really adjust so well with the times. And the market, is an enigma. You can't, tell the market where it should be. He's one of these guys. He's like an alpha male. He's been right about so many things in the past, and he's probably got all yes men around him. They're like, yes, Michael, you're right. Someone like that. He's smart, too smart for his own good, and he's probably thinks he's right all the time. He probably is right a lot of time, but you can't be right all the time. And the market's really what's right all the time, and yeah, we could be in a bubble, but who's to say? Like, you can't tell the market it's in a bubble. Like, okay, you think the market's in a bubble, that's fine. Put your money where your mouth is, and maybe he's doing that. But he has to be, he could be very wrong, as many other fund managers have been about Tesla for all these years, right? It's a different, you have to adapt to what the market's doing. Like, you can't just think the market should be here. And so I'm telling everyone the market's wrong, like, I guess you could predict the market's going to go a certain way, but I feel like the macro market, like predicting the macro market is very complex, predicting a stock, that's one thing. Like, okay, I think the market doesn't understand Tesla stock. Okay. And I think it should be worth less. So that's one thing, but he's predicting the whole market, and part of his contingency is the whole market's in this huge bubble. And those are hard to predict. Like, it's such a complex environment. Interest rates are so low. People have all this excess stores of value that they don't want to keep in dollars anymore. So they're putting it in all these other things. They're not buying gold anymore. They're buying cryptocurrencies. They're buying digital things. They're buying stocks. They're not buying even bonds anymore. So I don't know. It's just, I feel bad for his investors, to be honest. Like, they're stuck in kind of the old mindset manager.
I sent you actually, I think, an article that had a couple quotes. So Michael Burry said in some tweets that were deleted, said, "We are in a blow off top in all things." And he showed some chart, and he says, "The markets have now bubbled over in a dangerous way." And then alongside with Tesla, he's shorting Tesla. It's a tough one because you could, shout out, there's going to be a crash, and then at a certain point, if you shout long enough, you are right.
Yeah, he's been doing it for a while, right? He's been doing it for a while.
And I think that's the challenging part, I think, is there's always an inherent risk for a crash, like right now. I think what most people don't realize is they just look at the apparent surface level things. They look at the stock price or the markets, they look at the news and say everything's okay, right? But what's really happening is there is some inherent risk right now at this very moment for a crash. We're just not aware of it. We're just not seeing it, and we're not in touch with it. And that's why when someone comes along and says, "Oh my gosh, there's gonna be a crash," it actually triggers people, because there's actually some of that inherent risk, whether it's 0.1% or whatever low. There's still something in the system where people go, "Oh my gosh, I didn't see that," or "You're right, there is risk like that." And so I think the challenging part is, how do you discern, how do you figure out, like, is the risk increasing or decreasing? But also, like, there's oftentimes needs to be some type of trigger event, something that just causes dominoes to fall, like people to lose confidence in, where the stock market is going. And how do you know when a domino is going to fall and trigger other dominoes? But there's, I think that's the tricky part whenever you hear someone claiming there's going to be a market crash at a certain time or imminent, is, do they have a clear argument of what domino is going to fall? And how it's going to go about. Like, for example, the housing crash, that to me is like, that you could see the domino. You saw the domino like so clearly, like 6 months before the crash. Like, I was telling this Bruce Norris, he's a real estate investor I interviewed recently. Like, the people on the ground, they saw it. Like, I was seeing hundreds of auctioned houses going for 70% or more off of their last sold price. And knowing the market's going to crash, I remember I didn't have much. I didn't have, actually, we pulled everything from the stock market that we had. We didn't have much, but my parents had their entire retirement in the stock market. And I went to them, this was like 6 months before the crash. I'm like, the stock market's going to crash, And it was because I knew the domino. It was all the banks held hundreds of billions of dollars of toxic mortgages, and these houses were already foreclosing in mass. And then there was going to be many more waves of foreclosures because all the comps had killed all of the values of all of the houses in those areas. So it was just obvious what was going to happen. The domino of the banks would fall, and then this would lead to a major recession and all this stuff. And so 6 months before, I'm like, just saying, hey, pull everything right now. And in that situation, you could see the dominoes, but then oftentimes, that domino isn't there, or clearly. And all I think.
the way I think of it also is like if there's not a clear domino to see, like whether it's the housing crisis that you identified or the COVID thing that I,
Yeah.
thought, and sometimes the market just crashes and you can't clearly identify, like you said, and the way I think of it as like an analogy is like snow building up on a mountain, right? It just keeps building up and building up, and every once in a while there's a critical mass of snow that drops that suddenly, an avalanche starts, and sometimes the avalanche is just a little bit of snow that trickles down. It's a little bit of a blip, 5% maybe, but sometimes it could be that big avalanche where like it's enough snow is built up where a little bit of snow triggers more and more and more, and there's a giant avalanche, and it crashes the market, and but then it sets a new base for more snow to keep piling up for a much longer time until who knows when the next big avalanche would happen. So that's kind of an analogy I use. Like we don't know when that critical mass of investment into the market happens, where like a small sell-off can trigger a much bigger one that can't easily be recovered from.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah. I mean, that's the other thing is let's say with the whole avalanche example, the higher the snow is rising, like it does get riskier. I mean,
Yeah,
there's a
yeah,
thing.
yeah,
But
yeah.
on the flip side, we're in unprecedented times where we have massive government stimulus like flooding into the economy. We have
Yeah.
Biden coming in doing, proposing a massive infrastructure bill. The government's coming in stopping foreclosures. Like the government is doing almost everything it can, and then you have some very, I guess people who are willing to spend a lot of money in high places like the Treasury
And you better
Department or
believe
Fed.
this new Democratic, establishment that's taken over. You better believe they do not want to see the stock market crash during their tenure here. Like that was the big pitch of the last 4 years. Like the stock market's great when I'm running, when I'm ahead, or Republicans in charge, and now the Democrats are in charge. The last thing they want is to see the stock market crash when they're in charge, because then people, the Republicans be like, see, we proved it. You guys, when you're in charge, the stock market crash. So I feel like there's probably a chip on their shoulder to, while they have control of, the Senate, the House, or whatever, if there's like some inkling of a avalanche coming, if they think that, they're going to probably act quickly to try to bolster it back up and shore it up, in my opinion. So I think that's kind of, a little bit of a parachute for the time being until there's sort of a divided government again at some point.
Yeah, yeah, definitely makes sense. Yeah, yeah. I mean, overall, I mean, at this current time, my views can change, but there's so many forces that are just blowing up the market's assets. There's a lot of money that, in private hands, but also in government places that are ending up in the market in assets, I think. And there could be corrections, and there will be corrections along the way. But I think the bigger mistake, at least from my perspective, in my position, would be to stay out of the market, and to be so scared. I think that could be a danger too, But yeah,
Right.
and you've got to be able to be willing to weather the corrections, weather the volatility, because you have a longer term kind of thesis. So,
I'm a big fan of dollar cost averaging for that reason. If someone has like $100,000 in cash and that's all their savings, I tell my friends like, hey, put in a little bit now, a little bit every month, on the first day of every month or whatever. And that way you catch, you average over time, as opposed to putting it all in now, then the market crashes or something. You don't have to time it then.
yeah, definitely. All right, Emmett, any other thoughts you're having lately, or before we?
No, I've actually been thinking a lot about, for some reason, you know, I was thinking a lot about neural networks lately,
Yeah.
And just kind of random here, but that they're sort of like, I think they're going to play a really big part of the future, and I think Tesla's Dojo thing. I'm starting to think that could be like the real breadwinner in the future from like a software almost perspective. If combined with the enabling neural networks to be used by all kinds of services. So I don't know. I'm just kind of like pondering that the last few days, and it just seems to feel like one of those views. Like, man, I'm really curious to know what this dojo thing is that Elon said he'll eventually have a dojo day or whatever.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
really perked my interest. I think that could be as big or bigger than the physical stuff they do, the batteries and the car building, you know. So I don't know. That's just something I've been thinking about, like this neural network future we're going to go to.
I mean, that's interesting because whenever Elon does a special day, like Investor Day, it's big. Yeah. It's because it's
always
big.
Like, this is the biggest thing ever. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, autonomy, battery, like if he thinks, you know, Dojo's deserving of a day, Investor Day itself, then it could be big.
Yeah, at first I thought, oh, that's cool on a side thing, like, oh, it's like a Tesla semi day or something, you know. But now the more it sits and resonates with me, the more I'm starting to realize, you know, neural networks, they're going to be a huge part of like bridging humans to AI, I think, in general, in every aspect of life. So
yeah,
we'll see.
Yeah. One area I'm looking into the past week or so is home builders. And the reason is because all the markets I'm tracking, like demand is so high, and these home builders are just waitlisted. And I'm not tracking every market, but just in certain markets. And
the waiting list.
Waiting lists. And these home builders are increasing their prices. And so, I'm kind of just looking at, you know, the major home builders and, you know, just trying to get a pulse of, you know, what's going on with their balance sheets and where they're headed. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, they're building new homes. You know, I think there's a lot of future there, potential in home building, and I'm interested to hear more of your thoughts on that. Yeah, I'm sure you'll do something on that later.
I mean, long term, I don't like the business model of home building because it's not a very high margin business. It's not recurring revenue business. It's just kind of, you build this awesome house and then you sell it off. You don't keep ownership at all, you know? Like, if home builders had a way where they could build a community but keep 20%, let's say, of the inner square and lease out workspace in the inner square, but be the landlord, right? That would be an interesting model. But right now, they're not doing that. They're kind of like, I don't know, it just seems like they're contract workers to build something for other people. And they're not really, you know, the model doesn't really, I think, accrue the value that is exponential in growth. And then, but it's interesting. My question is, could there be though a short-term bounce or something? So it's more of a maybe a 6 to 12 month idea with home builders. Yeah.
I think the good thing about that also is the next year or so with the advent of self-driving becoming more adopted and remote working from home, like living in a city isn't as important, or living even in a suburb close to the city isn't important. So I think there'll be a lot of great opportunities to build new homes in you know, nice areas that aren't necessarily very close to a city, for example. And so there could be a lot of opportunity.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Sounds good. I want to, if you're open to, I want to do a Clubhouse session with you on Clubhouse or something. Maybe take some questions. I did a one session just a couple of days ago, and actually I was impressed. I was more impressed than my previous experience. So, but
we'll do a Clubhouse soon. Let's do that for sure. We'll signal it on Twitter or wherever so people know when to go on if we do it. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, Emmet, take care. Cool. Have a great day. Have a great week. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Dave. Okay. You too. All right, talk to you later. Bye.